We are in Mrs. Higgins' upscale and stylish home. It is 4 in the afternoon. Let's see Mrs. Higgins' reaction as Higgins rushes in.
Henry, what are you doing here today? It is my at-home day. You promised not to come.
Bother.
Go home at once.
I know, Mother. I came on purpose.
But you mustn't. I'm serious, Henry. You offend all my friends. They stop coming whenever they meet you.
Nonsense. I know I have no small talk, but people don't mind.
Oh, don't they? Small talk indeed. What about your large talk? Really, dear, you mustn't stay.
I must. I have a job for you. A phonetic job.
No use, dear. I'm sorry, but I can't get round your vowels. And though I like to get pretty postcards in your patent shorthand, I always have to read the copies in ordinary writing you so thoughtfully send me.
Well, this isn't a phonetic job.
You said it was.
Well, not on your part. I've picked up a girl.
Does that mean some girl has picked you up?
Not at all. I don't mean a love affair.
No, what a pity.
Why?
Well, you never fall in love with anyone under 45. When will you discover that there are some rather nice-looking young women about?
Oh, I can't be bothered with young women. My idea of a young, lovely woman is someone as like you as possible. I shall never get into the way of seriously liking young women. Some habits lie too deep to be changed. Besides, they're all idiots.
Do you know what you would do if you really loved me, Henry?
Oh, bother what?
No.
Marry, I suppose.
Stop fidgeting and take your hands out of your pockets. That's a good boy. Now, tell me about the girl.
She's coming to see you.
I don't remember asking her.
Well, you didn't. I asked her. If you'd known her, you wouldn't have asked her.
Indeed. Why?
Well, it's like this. She's a common flower girl. I picked her up off the curbstone.
And invited her to my at-home?
Oh, it'll be all right. I taught her to speak properly, and she has strict orders as to her behavior. She's to keep to 2 subjects, the weather and everybody's health. Fine day and how do you do, you know, and not to let herself go on things in general. That will be safe.
Safe? To talk about our health? About our insides? Perhaps about our outsides? Oh, how could you be so silly, Henry?
Well, she must talk about something. Oh, she'll be all right. Don't you fuss. Pickering is in it with me. I've sort of bet that I'll pass her off as a duchess in 6 months. I started on her some months ago, and she's getting on like a house on fire. I shall win my bet. She has a quick ear, and she's easier to teach than my middle-class pupils, because she's had to learn a completely new language. She talks English almost as you talk French.
Well, that's satisfactory at all events.
Well, it is and it isn't.
What does that mean?
You see, I've got her pronunciation all right, but you have to consider not only how a girl pronounces, but what she pronounces, and that's where you...
Mrs. and Miss Eynsford Hill.
Oh, Lord.
How do you do?
How do you do?
My son Henry.
Your celebrated son. I have so longed to meet you, Professor Higgins.
Delighted.
How do you do?
I've seen you somewhere before. I haven't the ghost of a notion where, but I've heard your voice. Oh, it doesn't matter. You'd better sit down.
I'm sorry to say that my celebrated son has no manners. You mustn't mind him.
Oh, I don't.
Not at all.
Oh, have I been rude? I didn't mean to be.
Colonel Pickering.
Oh, well, how do you do, Mrs. Higgins?
So glad you've come. Do you know Mrs. Eynsford Hill? Miss Eynsford Hill?
Has Henry told you what we've come for?
We were interrupted, damn it.
Oh, Henry. Henry, really?
Oh, are we in the way?
No. You couldn't have come more fortunately. We want you to meet a friend of ours.
Yes, by George, we want 2 or 3 people. You'll do as well as anyone else.
Mr. Eynsford Hill.
God in heaven, another of them.
How to do?
Very good of you to come.
And how to do?
Colonel Pickering.
How to do?
And I don't think you know my son, Professor Higgins.
Oh. How to do?
I'll take my oath I've met you before somewhere. Where was it?
I don't think so.
Oh, it doesn't matter anyhow. Sit down. Well, here we are. Anyhow. And now what the devil are we going to talk about until Eliza comes?
Henry, you are the life and soul of the Royal Society's soirees, but really you're rather trying on more commonplace occasions.
Am I? I'm so very sorry. Well, I suppose I am, you know.
Oh, I sympathize. I haven't any small talk. If people would only be frank and say what they really think.
Lord forbid.
But why?
Well, what they think they ought to think is bad enough, Lord knows, but what they really think would break up the whole show. Do you suppose it would be really agreeable if I were to come out now with what I really think?
Oh, is it very cynical?
Cynical? Who the dickens said it was cynical? I mean, it wouldn't be decent.
Oh, I'm sure you don't mean that, Professor Higgins.
You see, we're all savages, more or less. We're supposed to be civilized and cultured, to know about poetry and philosophy and art and science and so on, but how many of us know even the meanings of these names? What do you know of poetry? What do you know of science? What does he know of art or science or anything else? What the devil do you imagine I know of philosophy?
Or of manners, Henry?
Miss Doolittle.
Oh, here she is, Mother.
How do you do, Miss Higgins? Mr. Higgins told me I might come.
Quite right. I'm very glad indeed to see you.
How do you do, Miss Doolittle?
Colonel Pickering, is it not?
I feel sure we have met before, Miss Doolittle. I remember your eyes.
How do you do?
My daughter Clara.
How do you do?
I've certainly had the pleasure.
My son Freddie.
How do you do?
By George, yes! It all comes back to me! Covent Garden! What a damn thing!
Henry, please. And don't sit on my writing table. You'll break it.
Sorry!
Will it rain, do you think?
The shallow depression in the west of these islands is likely to move slowly in an easterly direction. There are no indications of any great change in the barometrical situation.
Well, just how awfully funny is that?
What is wrong with that, young man? I bet I got it right.
Oh, it's a killing, it is.
I'm sure I hope it won't turn cold. There's so much influenza about. It runs right through our whole family regularly every spring.
My aunt died of influenza. So they said. But it's my belief they done the old woman in.
Done her in?
Oh, yes, Lord love you. Why should she die of influenza? She come through diphtheria right enough the year before. I saw her with my own eyes. A fairly blue with it she was. They all thought she was dead. But my father, he kept ladling gin down her throat till she came to so sudden she bit the bowl off the spoon.
Dear me!
Ah, what call would a woman with that strength in her have to die of influenza? What's become of her new straw hat that should have come to me? Somebody pinched it, I say. And as I say, them as pinched it done her in.
What does doing her in mean?
Oh, that's just the new small talk. To do a person in means to kill them.
You surely don't believe that your aunt was killed?
Oh, do I not? Them she lived with would have killed her for a hat pin, let alone a hat.
But it can't have been right for your father to pour spirits down her throat like that. It might have killed her.
Oh, not her. Gin was mother's milk to her. Besides, he'd poured so much down his own throat that he knew the good of it.
Do you mean that he drank?
Drank, my word, something chronic.
Oh, how dreadful for you.
Oh, not a bit. It never did him no harm, what I could see. But then he did not keep it up regular. On the burst, as you might say, from time to time, and always more agreeable when he had a drop-in. When he was out of work, my mother used to give him 4 pence and tell him to go out and not come back until he'd drunk himself cheerful and loving-like. There's lots of women has to make their husbands drunk to make them fit to live with. You see, it's like this. If a man has a bit of conscience, it always takes him when he's sober, and then it makes him low-spirited. A drop of booze just takes that off and makes him happy. Here now, what are you sniggering at?
The new small talk, you do it so awfully well.
If I was doing it proper, what was you laughing? What were you laughing at? Have I said I oughtn't?
Not at all, Miss Doolittle.
Well, that's a mercy anyhow. What I always say is that... Well, I must go. So pleased to have met you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Colonel Pickering.
Goodbye, Miss Doolittle.
Goodbye, all.
Are you walking across the park? If so, Miss Doolittle, I would...
Park? Not bloody likely. Oh. I am going in a taxi.
Oh, well, I really can't get used to the new ways.
Well, oh, it's all right, Mama. Quite right. People would think we never go anywhere or see anybody if you're so old-fashioned.
I dare say I am very old-fashioned, but I do hope that you won't begin using that expression, Clara. I have got accustomed to hear you talking about men as rotters and calling everything filthy and beastly, although I do think it horrible and unladylike. But this last is really too much. Don't you think so, Colonel Pickering?
Don't ask me. I've been away in India for several years, and manners have changed so much that I sometimes don't know whether I'm a respectable dinner table person or at a ship's forecastle.
It's all a matter of habit, and nobody means anything by it. There's no right or wrong in it. And it's so quaint and gives such a smart emphasis to things that in themselves are not very witty. I find the new small talk delightful and quite innocent.
Well, after that, I think it's time for us to go.
Oh, yes, we still have 3 more at-homes to go to today. Goodbye, Mrs. Higgins, and goodbye, Colonel Pickering, and goodbye, Professor Higgins.
Goodbye. Be sure to try out all that small talk at the 3 at-homes. Don't be nervous about it. Pitch it in strong.
Oh, I will. Goodbye. Such nonsense, all this early Victorian prudery.
Such damn nonsense.
Such bloody nonsense.
Clara!
Oh, well, I ask you. Well, goodbye.
Goodbye. Would you like to meet Miss Doolittle again?
Yes, I should most awfully.
Well, you know my days.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mr. Higgins.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
It's no use. I shall never be able to use myself to use that word.
Don't. It's not compulsory, you know. You'll get on quite well without it.
Only Clara is so down on me if I'm not positively reeking with the latest slang. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You mustn't mind, Clara.
Oh,
We're so poor, and she gets to so few parties, poor child. She doesn't quite know. But the boy is nice. Don't you think so?
oh, quite nice. I shall always be delighted to see him.
Thank you, dear. Goodbye.
Well, is Eliza presentable?
You silly boy, of course she's not presentable. She's a triumph of your art and of her dressmakers, but if you suppose for a moment that she doesn't give herself away in every sentence she utters, you must be perfectly cracked about her.
But don't you think something might be done? I mean, something to eliminate the sanguinary element from her conversation.
Not as long as she's in Henry's hands.
Do you mean that my language is improper?
No, dearest, it would be quite proper, say, on a canal barge, but it would not be proper for her at a garden party.
Well, I must say...
Higgins, you must learn to know yourself. I haven't heard such language as yours since we used to review the volunteers in Hyde Park 20 years ago.
Oh, well, if you say so, I suppose. I don't always talk like a bishop.
Colonel Pickering, will you tell me what is the exact state of things in Wimpole Street?
Oh, well, I have come to live there with Henry. We work together at my Indian dialects, and we think it more convenient.
Quite so, I know all about that. It's an excellent arrangement, but where does this girl live?
With us, of course. Where would she live?
But on what terms? Is she a servant? If not...
Oh, I think I know what you
she?
mean, Mrs. Higgins.
Oh, dash me if I do. I've had to work at the girl every day for months to get her to her present pitch. Besides, she's useful. She knows where my things are, remembers my appointments and so forth.
What does your housekeeper, how does she get on with her?
Mrs. Pierce? Oh, she's jolly glad to get so much taken off her hands, for before Eliza came, she had to find my things and remind me of my appointments and such. But she's got some silly bee in her bonnet about Eliza. She keeps saying, "You don't think, sir," doesn't she, Pick?
Yes, that's the formula. You don't think, sir? That's the end of every conversation about Eliza.
As if I ever stop thinking about the girl and her confounded vowels and consonants. I'm worn out thinking about her and watching her lips and her teeth and her tongue, not to mention her soul, which is the quaintest of the lot.
You certainly are a pretty pair of babies playing with your live doll.
Playing? The hardest job I ever tackled. Make no mistake about that, Mother. But you have no idea how frightfully interesting it is to take a human being and change her to be a quite different human being by creating a new speech for her. It's filling up the deepest gulf that separates class from class and soul from soul.
Yes, it's enormously interesting. I assure you, Mrs. Higgins, we take Eliza very seriously. Every week, every day almost, there is some new change. We keep records of every stage, dozens of gramophone discs and photographs.
Yes, by George, it's the most absorbing experiment I ever tackled. She regularly fills up our lives, doesn't she, Pick?
We're always talking Eliza.
Teaching Eliza?
Addressing Eliza.
What?
Inventing new
I
language.
assure you, my dear Mrs. Higgins,
she's
that
the most
girl is a
extraordinary
genius.
quickness of
She
ear,
can
just
play
like
the
a
piano
parrot.
quite beautifully.
I've
And
tried her.
we have taken her to classical
sound,
concerts and to
African
music
dialects,
halls.
Stop.
dialects,
Stop.
African dialects, Hottentot,
I
click.
beg your pardon.
Oh, sorry. When Pickering starts shouting, no one can get in a word edgewise.
Be quiet, Henry. Colonel Pickering, don't you realize when Eliza walked into Wimpole Street, something walked in with her?
Her father did, but Henry soon got rid of him.
It would have been more to the point if her mother had, but as her mother didn't, something else did.
But what?
A problem.
I see. You're saying the problem is how to pass her off as a lady?
Oh, I've solved that problem. I've half solved it already.
No, you two infinitely stupid male creatures, the problem of what is to be done with her afterwards.
I don't see anything in that. She can go her own way with all the advantages I have given her.
The advantages of that poor woman who was here just now, the manners and habits that disqualify a fine lady from earning her own living, without giving her a fine lady's income. Is that what you mean?
Oh, that will be all right, Mrs. Higgins.
You'll find her some light employment.
She's happy enough. Don't you worry about her. Goodbye.
Anyhow, there's no good bothering now. The thing's done. Goodbye, Mother.
There are plenty of openings. We'll do what's right. Goodbye.
Ooh, let's take her to the Shakespeare exhibition at Earl's Court.
Yes, let's. Her remarks will be delicious.
She'll mimic all the people for us when we get home.
Ripping.
Men. Men. Ah! Men!